Great to see you. How are you? How are things going so far today?
You know, very good. Well,
Good.
I'm in Los Angeles, so who can
Well, we're all loving
complain,
this
right?
film. I got to tell you, I love this movie because it's so sensitive. It's something different that we've never seen before in terms of the subject matter. So let's go back. I want to start at the beginning. Obviously, it's a very personal story for you. Tell me
Yeah,
a little bit about when you decided to kind of sit down and tell the story because it is so much about your sisters.
yeah. I made films for 30 plus years, something, and I think I always had some kind of like thought that one day I would begin the subject of my sister's illness and all of that, but I never started writing, and because I didn't want to make a normal, what do you call it, like an illness film in that
Right.
sense.
Yeah.
And then one day, some years ago, basically it took me 5 years to write the film because I wrote a draft every year, and then I kind of did all kind of other stuff. But back in the day, I was on a trip. Actually, I was out kayaking with an old friend of mine that's known the family way back. We've known each other for more than half a century, which is kind of scary. And we were talking about how my sister was doing because he's known her since school.
Right.
Uh, and then we started talking about this crazy trip to France that my other sister, they actually called Kirsten and Maren Elizabeth,
Yeah.
Ellen and Luna, and that her and her husband had taken Maren on with all these people and what had happened. And then, you know, suddenly out of the blue, my old friend says, "Why don't you make a film about that?"
Yeah.
And the second he said it, I knew it was a good idea. And I'm the kind of person that tries to turn everything into films. So
You're a
I'm always
filmmaker.
saying, I'm always saying to my audience, don't ever tell me something personal if you don't want it up there, right? Because you can't trust a writer and a filmmaker. But but it was so in front of my nose, and I just never thought about it myself. And then I started writing, and I think the scene that really kind of like got me, that was kind of like the center of it all, is the scene where she reopens the museum, which happened in real life.
Yeah.
I realized with this kind of story, confining it to 8 days and putting it on a bus and letting it drive, I could tell a story that was not about so much about a schizophrenic woman as more about going through the diagnosis and meeting the person behind the illness.
Right.
And I thought, well, this is splendid. And then I started writing, and I was imagining that I was going to write something, kind of like as dry as a moor, like because I thought this is a very serious subject, it's mental
Mhm.
illness. Every time Inga opened her mouth, she said something that became a humorous situation in one way or the other.
Exactly.
Really kind of incontrollable to the point where I called my producer and my script consultant and said, "This is a problem. This film is becoming too humorous. It's too funny. I mean, I can't. I'm writing about my own sister, and I'm writing about a very heavy subject, and the film keeps being funny." This was actually a real problem for me. Of course, my producer said, "What's the problem?"
Well, I hear where you're coming from because but it works so well because when we see movies about mental illness or whatever, like they're so heavy and it's like, oh my gosh, and these are real people, they're real people. They do have humor. Like when just from the minute when she gets on the bus and she's like, "Hi, everybody, I'm schizophrenic," like it's not a comedy routine, but she's so honest. And think
Yeah,
about it, when you're on a trip with strangers, I mean, doesn't everybody have issues and stuff
yeah,
that you know what I'm saying?
yeah. I
Right?
mean, I think that what I was afraid. I think that it was an enormous pressure in the sense that because I didn't know how people were going to react to the film, and and I was afraid that somebody was gonna like feel like I exploited my sister or something like that. It was like especially with all the sensitivity there is about everything,
Sure.
and me being a kind of half old white dude, you got to be careful about what you do, right?
I know. Don't we all?
Yeah, but but I mean,
Yeah.
so I
Oh,
was
I
just
get it.
thinking, how is
Yeah.
the people? I mean, because it is and I'm really happy what you said first. You've never seen anything like this,
Yeah.
and I think this film is unique. And I think I would never have dared to write it this way had I not known my two sisters, because as well as I do. Because I mean, had I not been so close to this mental illness, because my so-called normal sister, I mean, I nominated her the guardian and ambassador for Mount Elizabeth, so she read everything I wrote, because I said,
Yeah.
obviously I don't trust myself. I would you want to write the most efficient film, the
Yeah.
most effectful film. And we were constantly discussing, and as we were discussing through the draft, that it turned more and more into becoming a two-hander.
Right.
And I realized that my other sister's story and the pressure that she's been under from my mom, from our mom,
Yeah.
and from my sister's illness, because I found out an expression here in America. They call it Irish twins when kids are very close together.
Yes. Yes.
I don't know what that, but it doesn't sound very politically
Yeah.
correct.
I don't get yeah, but I know I've heard that expression
But
as
I guess it
well.
relates to Irish people getting a lot of kids very fast or something. You know, I don't know, but but for her to lose her older sister when she was so close,
Yeah.
and become the caretaker, and the roles of little sister and bigger sister flipped.
Absolutely. I wanted to know if it was hard for you to cast this because they're both so awesome. They're both
It
amazing.
was. It was tough. It was tough in the sense that I had really no idea who could play Mount Elizabeth as Inger, and also because I haven't lived in Denmark since 2009.
Yeah.
The end of eight, and so all my perspective of the actors in Denmark, even though I go home and shoot films, but somehow it's still kind of like back then. So my perspective of Sophie was that she was too young and too pretty, and she, petite or whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, but Anders, my friend, through many films, that plays Baum, and also the casting director Tanya, they said to me, you have to consider Sophie, because we think she's the one. And then I realized, that she wasn't like that young girl that we used to know back in the day. And I met,
Mm,
she's aged beautifully, but she's aged like everybody.
right.
And then I asked her if she would come to a rehearsal with me, and I said it's not an audition because I'm thinking about 2 days, and she was like, oh fuck, 2 days. And then normally actors come in for an hour, and then we worked over these days, and I immediately thought she's the one that can do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
No, so terrific. Like they really were both terrific. And I just want to address too what really touched my heart is her connection with the young boy Christian, and it's interesting to me because, kids, like they say the darndest things, and he's just so honest, but they connect so well together.
yeah,
It was just beautiful to watch that. And again, like even just casting this young boy and how the two of them
yeah,
connected. It was
yeah,
great.
yeah. He's very, very good too, that young kid. I have a I had two casters. I have a caster in Denmark that specializes in children's casting, and I've worked with her before. She's very good, and she's extremely good at finding these kids that can do this magic. Yeah, there is a very special connection between them.
Yeah. And it makes sense because they can kind of relate to each other in a way, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and he's open. I mean, he's that kind of kid that's just curious, and of course, when he finds out that or when she says that she probably became mentally ill because of falling in love, that's a very dangerous subject when you're 13 years old.
For sure.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, in
Yeah.
some ways, he is a fantastic insight for the audience into Inger's inner life. You know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Just to wrap it up, because we only have a few minutes, but I just want to ask you, when you're working on a film like this, but it's so personal, and then you look back at the other films that you've made over the years, especially when, exploded, of course, with Dragon Tattoo. I mean, huge. I
yeah.
mean, just huge. What do you prefer? Do you prefer that kind of frenetic, actiony things, or do you like this more personal, a little more quieter kind of film to work on?
It's really, I mean, with the danger of me being dual personality, split personality myself for a little bit, it's kind of like, when I do films like in America, like Dead Man Down, and it's kind of action and shooting, it's kind of
Right.
like the boyish side of me. And then when I do my Scandinavian films, it tends to be, my more emotional, intellectual side that
Yeah.
I'm also in complete control when I'm shooting in Scandinavia.
Of
But
course.
I think the Girl with Dragon Tattoo was kind of landed both sides, because I would never have done it without Lisbeth's character. She was really and she was oddly familiar. She was like the twin sister to a character in my very first film. That's a very dark, violent Danish film called Portland.
Yeah.
Caused a scandal in Berlin Film Festival and all that kind of stuff. But there was an odd connection between. I think The Girl with Dragon Tattoo is a thriller, but I infused so much drama into it, and I kept it so real, that you actually were emotional with the characters, and that was quite unusual for a thriller. And I
Yeah,
think
absolutely.
that what made it. People were it was suspenseful, but then at the same time, suddenly they felt something for the
Yeah.
characters in a way you
Yeah.
don't really do in
Uh,
thrillers.
yeah, absolutely.
So in a
Yeah.
weird way, I think the film is the crossover, but it's really hard to say what I prefer. I mean, if somebody put a gun to my head and said you can only do one thing, I would probably do the smaller dramas,
Yeah.
because I come from the north in Denmark, and the people there, it is closer to my heart in that sense.
Well, don't give up either. You're doing a good job on both of them. So I'm just
But
telling
I
you. But
also enjoy, to start up a television series that's completely way different than.
exactly. Yes, exactly. And that's a whole other discussion. I wish I had more time with you, but I really do appreciate your time today. This, like I said, it's a beautiful film. You should be extremely proud. And I really did think it was so well done. So thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And have a great weekend and happy holidays to you. That's coming up soon too.
Thank you very much. Hey,
You're
you
welcome.
you
Take
too.
care. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye bye.